So I remember the very first time when this whole thing got started, putting on a mask in public. I don't know how you felt, but I just felt a little sketchy walking around in the store with my mask. And some people would have them on, some people wouldn't have them on. So that was a little weird too. And I also remember putting on the mask and feeling like I was gonna suffocate with that thing on. I also, if you wear glasses, you know what I'm talking about. They just keep fogging up. Every time you talk, they fog up or you breathe. And also, not only that, but you can't hear people talk when they're wearing their mask. And maybe you did this. I'm sure you didn't. But I sometimes would walk around a store when I had my mask on, and I would silently judge people that didn't have masks on. Maybe you did that too. Maybe just respond in the chat space whether or not you did that. But I did. And remember those times where you forgot your mask? I mean, like one time I was going into Target. I just wanted to run in real quick and run out. And I ran in. I didn't have my mask. And I came across a couple from the church. And of course, they had their mask on. I felt so embarrassed. And I felt like a failure as an irresponsible pastor. Also, during this journey that we've been on, I remember, did you ever wash your grocery bags and your items before you brought them inside? We did that. We'd dump everything out in the garage. We'd wipe everything down with sanitizer before we brought in. And then someone said, well, you don't need to do that, so we stopped doing that. I also have thought about my hand washing practices through all this. I have never washed my hands so many times. And I remember throughout this, I've been like, do I have the right kind of soap, first of all? Am I washing my hands long enough? Did I sing the birthday song? And maybe you even found yourself like I did. It was like Googling to find out if you're washing your hands the right way. And of course, I Googled it and found out I had been doing a lot of things wrong when it came to washing my hands. And then, of course, there's that moment where you're trying to figure out from the experts what to do, what's going on. And quite honestly, I'm sure it's been very difficult for the scientific community, the medical community, because this is a virus that is of a different kind of strain, and it's shown up in different ways. So I know it's been difficult because we've never gone through this before. But the truth is, I would listen to some of the experts, and it would be like the zombie apocalypse is upon us. But then you would listen to other experts and medical personnel, and they would basically say that, you know, we have done the job of flattening the curve. And so the longer we stay in isolation, it's gonna wear down our immune systems, are gonna get weaker. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. Dang it, it's like, which way do you go? And then on top of all of this, I think that for some of us, the challenging part about this has been maybe working from home, maybe schooling our children. I think we've all experienced some anxiety through this whole journey. But for some of us here, you've lost a lot. You've lost a job. Maybe you've lost a sizable amount of your income, and your back's against the wall now financially. Maybe for you, you've even lost a loved one during this time. And so everybody's had a common journey, but we've also had a very different experience. And now it seems like we're turning a corner towards the reopening of America. And there are all sorts of opinions about the pace at which we do that. And of course, in the midst of that whole conversation has been the church. When will the church reopen? And quite honestly, the conversation around this has been highly polarizing and highly divisive. You see, if you're a pastor and you're going pretty slow and cautiously in this process, I've literally heard other pastors talk about these pastors going at a slower pace, and they've said, you just need to get a backbone as a leader. You need to have more faith. You need to have more courage. And then those pastors that have maybe tried to start before a lot of other people started, well, people are talking about them like they have a total disregard for the value of human life. And this is within the church. And then, of course, when President Trump gave his announcement that he hoped churches would begin to gather that very weekend that he was making the announcement, of course, that just heightened the conversation greatly. In fact, I've heard from, different people around the community, different pastors have been talking, when are you guys reopening? And so it's become this question that a lot of people are asking. In fact, if you want to see what it looks like in the life of a pastor right now in terms of reopening, I found this graph on social media, and this kind of reflects where pastors are. You look around all those circles. We need to open the church building now. What are you waiting for? Don't ever open that church again. You can't open the church. It's a huge health risk. My family is staying home. And that's kind of the complexities that many of us are facing. But our leadership team has been in constant prayer about where we are and regarding how we best remain faithful to God and to the mission that God has called us toward. And not only the mission, but who are we and how are we to conduct ourselves as ones who say we follow a Christ who lived out sacrificial love and concern for others. So what I want to do today is it's going to be a little different message in our Peace in the Chaos series. I just want to share a little bit of my heart and the leadership, the heart of our leadership in terms of how we are discerning our way forward in all of this. Here's the first point I want to make, though. I want to make sure we call attention to this. The church closed down our buildings for a season, but we never closed down the mission. I think it's been very exciting to see in the midst of the fact that physical campuses, churches are closed, and most churches around the world went immediately to online, an online presence. And during this time, we've learned a lot of things about what it means to be the church, about extending the gospel to places and to people maybe that we would have never reached any other way. In fact, in this time since the whole pandemic started and we've been online with our worship experience, we've had over 100 people make a first-time decision to give their lives to Jesus Christ, which to me is just one of the highlights to celebrate as a church. Also, engaging our online worship experience, we have over doubled the numbers of people that we were reaching before the campus shut down, and now how many people we're reaching. We have over doubled the people that are engaging with our worship experience online, which is once again something to be celebrated. In fact, if you're new to Beach through the online community, we just want to say welcome. We are so glad that you're a part of this family. And I want you to know that even on the day that we come back and worship physically in this space on our campus, we will continue to do online worship. And we love you guys, and we're so excited that you're a part of this family. I've also been very, very excited to see what's happening in our Next Gen ministries. In our Beach kids and our Beach students, they are all online. You'll know that at 9 and 9:30 on Sundays, they are on our online worship experience. You can see that. And then at 7 p.m. on Sunday nights, our student worship experience is online. And I love the way a lot of our parents have begun to see a very significant place of influence that they have in the lives of their children. It's been cool to watch online and see how our parents are taking such a strong role in the leadership of their children in their faith journey. And we have actually started this home kit that we've been passing out to the families. We have 231 children that have received home kits over this time or in this next month. And it's so cool to see parents realizing that even though the church is walking alongside you to partner with you in terms of helping raise up the next generation, you are the most influential voice in the life of your children. I also love the fact that we have really focused in on being a 7-day-a-week church. I think most churches in America, sometimes we get a little lazy in how we've approached church. And I think because worship oftentimes is the largest setting that we have in our church gatherings, that we've forgotten so much the importance of equipping people to be followers of Jesus in their families, in their workplaces, in their neighborhoods. And throughout this pandemic, we have seen the church emerge as a 7-day-a-week equipper of people who are seeking to follow Jesus. And also, we have continued to serve in our community through Beach's Community Kitchen. We've continued to serve. Many of you have joined in on our buddy system where you have been partnered up one-on-one with a person in Pablo Towers who is of the most vulnerable and isolated population in our community, just to bring a word of encouragement and pray for them every day. So it's been exciting to see the church still engaged in serving our community, as well as you guys have just been practicing such radical generosity through this time. And I'm so grateful because I know it's been a challenge and I know it's been difficult. But here's the thing I want to approach today in terms of when does the church actually, when do we actually come back to the church? When do we actually come back to the physical buildings? I want to spend the rest of our time talking a little bit about that. And here's one of my most important convictions during this next season we're getting ready to go into. Coming back to church is more about the how than the when. It's more about the how than the when. You see, I could be wrong in terms of my opinion about when we reopen the church. But I don't want to be wrong when it comes to obedience, because I think the how is all about obedience. How do we leverage who we are in Christ as a community of faith to live out this next season in a way that honors Jesus, in a way that communicates with the world what it means to truly be a people of love? You see, I believe that following Jesus changes the way you see the world and the way you live in it. It changes the way you see the world. It changes your perspective. And as we go through this season, I believe entering into this kind of conversation about the opening of the church, of America and all that, I think, man, I hope that in this season we honor Jesus in the way we enter into that conversation. So I want to share with you 3 scriptures today that I think there are multiple scriptures throughout the New Testament that refer to how do we continue to be the people of God even through a difficult season ahead. Here's the first passage, Romans 12:10. It says this: honor one another above yourselves. Honor one another above yourselves. That word in the Greek for honor, it literally means take the lead in showing honor to others. It literally means to go first in honoring others. Now, in our culture, I think a lot of times when we think about honor, we think about being the person of honor, right? We think about being honored ourselves, and we want people to honor us. But Paul kind of flips the script here, and he says, in light of who Jesus is, we want to be able to go first in honoring other people and honoring one another. It's kind of like when there's a wedding. When there's a wedding, you know there's a bride and the groom. It's clearly that they are people of honor and you're simply a guest. But I think sometimes it's not so clear in our day-to-day relationships. And so what Paul is saying is, just as Jesus went first for you to lay down his life for you, so the spirit of his people is to be one of honor. And I would just say this as an aside too. For those of you today that are viewing online and maybe you're not a believer of Jesus right now, I want you to hear something. What I want to describe for you today is really who the church is called to be. We haven't always gotten this right? We a lot of times have not lived in a way that honors Jesus, and really, and maybe some of your experiences have been that you have not experienced the love of Jesus through a church at some point in time. But today I want to share with you, this is God's picture of what it means to walk out faith as a family or a community of faith. So honor one another above yourselves. You go first. Don't wait for the other person. You lead the way. Second scripture, Ephesians 4 verses 1 through 3. Paul writes this, and he was in prison for his faith at the time he writes this letter. As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Because you see, God's grace is a gift. You're saved not because of what you have done, but because of what Jesus has done for you. So the calling is a calling you have received as a gift by God. Living that out means this. It looks like this. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. That word for bearing with one another in love, that whole phrase, here's what that means. It means learning to love one another in spite of your differences. This does not mean bearing with one another over sin. What Paul's referring here to is bearing with one another even though we have differences. Different opinions, different giftings, different passions, different expectations. We have a lot of things about our relationships can be very different that have nothing to do with our faith per se. And so what Paul is saying here is learn how to live with, work with, serve with those who have different personalities, different perspectives, different ways of doing things. It's kind of like when my wife and I got married. We had very similar values. We had very similar goals in terms of what we wanted for our family. But we were very different. If you know my wife and you know me, we are two very different people. So all of a sudden, when you come together in marriage, in close proximity, and you're doing life together, all of a sudden, those opinions, those quirks about you, those personality differences, your perspective on things, all of a sudden comes into play. And so there were a lot of things for Denise and myself that were very, very different and still are. And I believe that one of the greatest ways of a healthy marriage or of a healthy relationship is when you learn how to deal with differences like that. You're not always gonna see the world the same way. You're not always gonna have some of the same perspectives, and yet it's so important in the midst of all of that that we learn what it means to love one another in spite of some of our differences. Oh, could the world learn that more today? I mean, we have forgotten how to converse and how to love one another through our differences. And oftentimes, how many conversations online or in life break down and relationships are just totally jacked up because we have not learned how to bear with one another through our differences. And so as we steward our journey over this next season, that's going to be huge. The how matters. The how matters. And then the third scripture, Philippians 2, 3 through 4. Paul writes, do nothing from selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, check this out, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. You see, what Paul is saying is that as you walk with Jesus, as you seek his leadership in your life, then you follow after his example. Jesus was the Son of God, and he could have easily powered up and made his life about him, but he chose to make his life about you and about me. You see, he was the most valuable one of all, and yet he put your value ahead of his. And so Paul is saying here, lead the way in valuing others. It doesn't mean that you're not valuable. It just means because you are so highly, you see how highly valued you are in God's eyes, then you learn how to sacrificially love others and consider their needs and their value above your own. So how does all this play into how we come back to church? Well, Pastor Kevin Myers out of 12 Stone Church, he gave this incredible analogy. And the minute I heard this analogy, it resonated with my heart as a leader. And I thought, this is the analogy I want to use to help our church understand what does it mean to move back into community. How do we go about doing that? So I hope this will be helpful. I hope it'll shed a little light on how your leadership here at Beach is discerning the question of reopening. So it's the analogy of the traffic light. Now, with the traffic light, some people are the green light, right? Some people are a green light with regard to all of this pacing and the reopening of America and of the church. These kinds of people will say, I will attend in-person worship at the very first opportunity. I'll come running back. I've been missing my friends. I don't even know why you closed, but I can assure you, I'm gonna be there. Day one, let's get on with our lives. That's the green light people. Maybe that represents you today. But then there are also the red light people. And by the way, most people agree that green light is about 25% of people. About 15% of people are the red light people. And what their posture is regarding the reopening of the church will be, I will attend online services for the foreseeable future. Some of you might be, I actually like online. I actually like being with my family and with my friends, and we gather in our home. And maybe that's just where you are, and you're saying, I just don't think it's worth the risk right now. Usually associated with many, many people I've met that are kind of this red light perspective, there's usually a story involved. And it usually involves a person that is very near and dear to them, that maybe has an immune deficiency, maybe a loved one who is undergoing chemotherapy treatments. Maybe they have an elderly person in the most vulnerable age group that's living with them. Maybe they have a newborn in their family. And so for them, guys, you gotta understand, this is not just another issue. For them, it's life and death. And there's a face attached to it, someone that they love and they care about greatly. So this would represent the red light people. Then, of course, there's the yellow light people, and they represent about 60% of people today. And these people would say, and maybe this is you, it may be a little while before I attend. I'm cautiously coming back into all this. And these are the people that say, I want to know what you are going to do to provide the safest and the cleanest environment for both myself and for my family. I want to see the step-by-step process. It's kind of like me with my gym right now. So my gym opened up like 3 weeks ago, and I love that place. And it's not the same thing working out in your garage. And I love the people there. I love the trainers. And they opened up 3 weeks ago, and I haven't been back yet. I'm still doing the online training. And the reason for that, and they keep it immaculately clean. They've rearranged all the workouts to kind of help people to have just the greatest sense of security. But for me, I've got a newborn in my life, my little granddaughter, Aspen. And she's only just a little bit over 2 months right now. See, for me, when I'm weighing the difference between going back to the gym or having a chance to still be in Aspen's life as her G-dada on a regular basis, that far outweighs going back to the gym right now. I'll get back there. I'm definitely gonna be back, just not for a while. So maybe that's you. Maybe you are a yellow light person. So my question for you right now is, where are you? In fact, you might even turn to people who are in the same room with you and just say, what are you? You red light, green light, yellow light person. Here's what I want you to know. There is no right or wrong perspective on how you are processing, living in this new normal. You see, here's the reality. None of us have been through a pandemic before. So we're all doing the best we can in this time to figure out what's best for us. You see, if you're a part of Beach Church, we're not a red light church. We're not a yellow light church. We're not a green light church. We are the whole traffic light. And as we walk out this journey together as the community of Christ, it reframes how we go about doing that. You see, God's most important questions for all who would call Beach your family or your church home. How are you going to love others in spite of our differences in this whole conversation? How are you going to love others through the differences for the sake of unity and for the sake of the mission of the church? You see, ultimately, this is not about you and it's not about me. Ultimately, it's about Jesus and it's about his mission. So we got to get ourselves out of the way enough to be clear on the mission of Jesus to a broken and hurting world. And we got to learn what it means to love one another through it all, in spite of our differences. It means, how are you going to take the lead? How are you going to go first in honoring people around you? And our perspective is not just about this church family. It is about the entire community around us. See, here's the truth. What do we say all the time as a church? We are for the beaches. We believe that God is for people, so we're for people. We're for our community. We're for the businesses in our community. We're for the schools in our community. We're for the hospitals, the nonprofits. We're for our neighbors. And so entering into this question is about our community as well. As a church, we've been in this community for over 80 years, and we are considered a leader in this community. So how we steward our decisions well for the sake of this community really does matter. And I gotta tell you, I've already heard far too many stories about the complexities that are caused when someone catches this virus and the ripple effects that extend far beyond just you and your family. It extends to your social circles, and then it extends to their social circles. And before you know it, you've just got a mass of people that are impacted by this. And so we want to leverage our influence well in this community and be responsible in this community as well. You see, God is inviting us in this season of reopening to show what I think oftentimes a very hypersensitive and overly self-preoccupied world, what it means to be unified and care for each other in the midst of differing opinions, to show what it looks like to be a community of grace and of love. How we steward this next season as the people of God will impact what God is able to do in and through us in the seasons to follow. Here's a very important statement that I want you to hear as we enter into this, because we're not going to all agree on the pace of the reopening and what it looks like, even when you do wind up back on campus. Here's a thing we need to remember. I need to know your perspective more than you need to know mine. I want to show honor. I want to value those around me. I want to be concerned not just about my perspective or my opinion, but I want to be concerned about the life and welfare of others as well. You see, we can have different opinions and be in the same body. What would it be like if the church actually reframed what does it mean to have a civil conversation even though we have different opinions? We could lead the way in that, and I hope we do. Paul says, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit. Why? Because Jesus knew that in and through our unity as a people of God, the world would come to see who he really is and his love for them. So I got one little action step before we finish up today, and that is we have developed a survey. It's like not even 2 minutes. I bet you can do it in 30 seconds. It's only got one significant question, and that question is, where are you? Are you red light? Are you green light? Are you yellow light? And I want you to answer that one question. There's going to be like 3 other demographic informational questions. It's anonymous. We don't have your name or anything, but I want you to go and fill that out. You will see a link in the chat space if you want to do that right now, or it'll also be posted on our social media, so you can go to Facebook and be able to do that as well. But I hope that you'll take the time to. I'm interested. I want to know, where are you in all this? It matters, because if we truly honor one another, if we truly value one another, and how we live together in community as we go forward is going to matter greatly. And it's going to impact the witness we have on the world. I want to finish with these words that Jesus said to his disciples before he went to the cross. Some of the most important words of all. Here's what Jesus said. A new command I give you. Love one another. Now notice it's a command. It's a command because love is more than a feeling. You can't command a feeling. You see, love is far more than a feeling. Love is a decision you make to honor and to cherish and to value the others in your life and to love them. So Jesus said, a new command I give you. Love one another. And then he describes what that love should look like, because we have lots of definitions of love in this world, right? And some of them are life-taking instead of life-giving. But not with Jesus. With Jesus, he is life-giving. Here's what he says. As I have loved you, you must love one another. That's the description of love. Love people like Jesus. One of the prayers I pray every single morning when I get up is, God, would I love you with my heart, soul, mind, and strength? And would you help me to love the people around me like Jesus loves me? So that's the marching orders that Jesus gives us. You see, it's far more important how we enter into this new season than when. We should be leading the way and modeling what it means to love one another. You see, here's the truth. A year from now, mark my words, a year from now, the timing of our reopening of this campus here at Beach will not be a big deal. But how we treated one another as we walked through that season, how we shared empathy, how we valued each other and the people around us, how we honored one another, that will be a big deal. And I pray that we would journey together in a way that honors Christ and shows an oftentimes skeptical and unbelieving world what the genuine love of Jesus is really all about. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, it's not easy navigating through this whole journey. We've never been down this path before. And every single one of us has opinions. But God, at the end of the day, we might not have the right opinions, but we want to be faithful and obedient to you in this season. We want to be a people who love well, who care not only about what's happening in our lives, but we care deeply about the value of the lives of others around us. And we want to be people who lead the way in showing honor to others. And so God, help us to so live in this next season that in the seasons to come, you will give us a platform and a witness of love and hope that will reach many far and wide for the glory and honor of Jesus. We love you and we thank you for first loving us. Amen.